Peace. I'm Supreme Understanding, and I'm coming to you from a place where I could really only talk to you about one thing. That's the history of white folks. You know we need to know this history, because as Nipsey Hussle once said, if you don't understand white supremacy, then you're not going to understand nothing. We'll take it a little bit further. If you don't understand why there's white supremacy, then you're not going to understand nothing. So my goal is to help you understand something. We're going to talk about white folks, the history of white folks, why white folks act like white folks, and what that means for us. Now, I'm a 5%. We're one of the few cultures on this planet who have a full understanding of why white supremacy exists, where it comes from, and what has to happen for these problems to change. Of course, a lot of us are in a little bit of a confusion about this history because they got the wrong version. They heard that white folks was grown in a petri dish by a mad scientist named Yakub. Or maybe it just got really cold and white people just started changing colors because of the cold and the snow. Or maybe there was an albino colony that was just left to die somewhere in the mountains and then they became Europeans. Sorry, but reality ain't really like science fiction in that way. It's so much simpler. You know how white lab mice turn about? You know how we get white rice? You know how we get anything that's white out of something that's brown in nature? Same way. You breed brown mice and you end up with lighter and lighter mice by selecting out those that have recessive traits. It's happened throughout the world. In fact, that's how Hitler was trying to get the perfect white people. The whole idea of creating the Aryan race through selective breeding, the whole idea of making another people, a people that was different from the original population, they did that in Germany, they did it in Greece before that, they did it, the Spartans, what do you think they was trying to make? They was trying to make super people. Why was they trying to make super people? Why was Nietzsche and all kinds of other philosophers saying that they wanted to make a white Superman? Well, because they was looking at the real Superman. That's your ass. You the original Superman. You the original superhuman, you the original prototype, you the original man. So the original man and the original woman were considered by the rest of the world as divine because they seen what original people did everywhere they went. They established civilization, they established cultures of righteousness, they implemented traditions like farming. You get my point. We laid the foundations for civilization. Wherever you look, there was black people that went into every part of the world. India, China, Japan, the Pacific Islands, Australia, the Americas. I don't know how many fingers I got up, but pretty much everywhere in the world, black people, dark-skinned people went. And now some of them people ain't dark-skinned no more. I'm deciding kind of like, I'm not sure, I might be like a peanut butter color. You know what? Same reason I got this nose. You know where we got it from? Same reason you got that curly hair. White folks. What makes white folks go around raping? Let's think about this. What makes a people go around raping? There's gotta be something in your pathology to make you feel like rape, child molestation, necrophilia, scat. You know what scat is? Google it. I don't want to talk to you about it. And all these other things is just traditional norms in white culture. And the question is, why are these people so weird? Original people throughout the world don't really always get it, even though we kinda get it. It's not like the Nation of Islam was the first ones to call them devils. Look at any movie. Gaijin, what do that mean? That's Japanese for white devil. You look anywhere, any culture, what do they call them? White devils. Now the question isn't, was we so racist that we just picked on them? The question is, why did we think of them as devils when they got there? Well, what did they do when they got to your homeland? Let's think. Did they bring cupcakes? Did they empower the people with a new economic system that made everybody... Oh, no, wait, we already had that. Everybody was already equal. So what did they bring? Oh, inequality, exploitation, poverty, rape, slavery, genocide. Thank you. You've given us the greatest things you've got to offer. Now we've got to figure out why that's what you've got to offer. So this isn't going to be a hate speech. It's not really about hate. It's about understanding. Because if we can understand why things are the way they are, maybe we can get a little further along in our own growth and development. Because we're stunted by our lack of understanding. We don't know why we're in such a low position in this world. I'm talking about globally, the black and brown diaspora, those people who descend from African descent, and I'm talking about throughout the world, are at the bottom of society everywhere you go. In fact, the United Nations even declared that the next 10 years, from 2015 to 2025, was going to be a decade of recovery for people of African descent to recover from white supremacy. The United Nations is saying that. So don't be mad at me. The whole world is in agreement right now, from Native Americans in British Vancouver to the people in Fiji. Everybody in the world is kind of agreed on why we're suffering. And now about why people brought suffering to us. When we look at white folks, we kind of see people that kind of act like babies, right? Motherfuckers is really just like immature children tearing up a planet, like as if this was their home and we gave them a room in the house and they just tear up their bedroom. And now you feeling like a parent because you realize you gotta live here for the next million years. And they done tore up your home. The water can't be drunk, the air can't be breathed. You can't walk around without fear of getting shot by the state that you pay your taxes to. You pay to be murdered by the state. You pay to send your kids to a school where they're taught that they're not human, that they're not as good as anybody else. Our kids are dehumanized daily, not just by the media, not just by the school system, not just by the way the society is structured, but by every message they receive in a society that's dominated by white supremacy. The question is why? What would make a people want to engineer a world that way where the majority of the world's populations are fed up with them? I mean, white folks, you gotta know that people in the world are mad at you. The question you should be asking yourself is why? So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what does it mean to be white. Let's first say this. White is an agreement. Irish folks, German folks, Bavarian folks, Dutch folks, they agreed on whiteness as a collective identity. White is not who you are. White is who you agreed upon with everybody else. So when people say I'm white, you already telling me which team you play for. That team is a team that historically has said, we want to be on top. We feel like we're outnumbered, we feel like we're outpowered, we feel like we yet should still be on top. And that mentality has survived for how many thousands of years? Now it didn't start out that way, because if you go back to the history of white folks, how far can you really go back? Let's think. Go back to your history books. You ain't going back too much more than 2000 BC when we talk about the history of Europe, right? Well, in that time is when you find the time period where we get the origin of the name Caucasian. Where does Caucasian come from? Just Google it. Nobody ever bothers to ask these kinds of questions like, what do it mean to be Caucasian? It means from the Caucasus. The Caucasus Mountains. This is a part of Europe that's right there in Southeast Europe, near the border of Russia, where you find some real, to this day, them white folks in the mountains of the Caucasus ain't no joke. They had to live there for 2,000 years, because there really wasn't no place else for them to go. After they got out, anything that they didn't tear up in 1500 BC, they made sure that they built themselves up so they could be strong enough to tear that bitch up in 1500 AD. Now if I'm wrong, just tell me I'm wrong. I didn't spend my life studying history to just make things up. I'm not trying to offend you or insult you. I'm really speaking on the historical record. I mean, we've looked at history and we can say, look man, Brooklyn keep on making it and they keep on taking it. It's obvious. It ain't nothing that I gotta convince you of nowadays. I wanna explain to you why though. Well, when you look at the history of the Caucasus and the people that were put there, you want to start understanding why they were sent there. Why they lived there for so long, and what happened when they spilled out in caves and they hit every center of urban civilization around 2000 to 1500 BC. That's a historical error that very few of us know about, and if we knew about it, we'd understand what's happening to us right now. We've been going through it for this long, and if we start to understand history, then we can start to understand our present condition, understand what our future holds for us. Through learning the lessons of history, we learn about what to do about the present and the future. The reason why I write books where I go into the history of our people, or go into the history of all people, is because we have to understand that our present day problems is not something that just came out of the sky. These ain't things that just manifested out of nowhere. It ain't like we just dreamed up the idea of being oppressed and now we oppressed. This is a historical byproduct of thousands of years. Don't say racism started with slavery. No, racism is the reason for slavery. Don't say racism started with capitalism. Racism is the reason for capitalism. Don't say racism is a byproduct of anything other than the fact that there's a people who, because of their own ideas about race and their understanding of how race should impact their life, they took on a very different perspective from the rest of the indigenous world. We, being the original people of the world, didn't see race as a reason to want to oppress and kill one another. Never really had that kind of impulse. I mean, if anything, we need to survive, but never as a means of just being over one another. That's not a historical thing that you're going to find among too many indigenous societies. At least not until Europeans get there. It's a pathology that we're going to have to start to understand. And I'm only digging a little bit into this shit because I know y'all got a lot more digging to do. You can do it on your own, but I'm going to take y'all further. We're going to have opportunities. I just want to start out now by giving you a little bit to chew on. This is just a little bit. Start with that. Start with researching the Caucasus Mountains. Start by looking for any evidence of European culture before that time period. Find some culture in Europe. They gonna look like us though. Once you start figuring out that history, things will start making a lot more sense. Peace.